In our gospel today, the people are asking for a sign from Jesus, and they refer back to the food that the Lord provided for Israel during their 40-year journey in the desert. They say, our ancestors ate manna in the desert, the bread from heaven, which the Lord gave them to eat. We have an interesting word in Tagalog for the manna concept. Sa Tagalog, PANTAWID-GUTOM. And literally, it means an emergency provision for surviving hunger. You know, the manna concept comes very close to the Maginhawa community pantry idea, which unfortunately the Quezon City Police seems to have mistaken for the Communist Party. I hope they have realized their mistake by now. It's community, not communist. It is pantry, not party. The principle is share what you can, take what you need. A simple expression of bayanihan. And the couple who started it explained it very well. It is not charity, but mutual aid, pagtutulungan. We are responsible for one another. You know, this principle has never been more timely than now. Now that we are in a global and national state of calamity caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, economies are in a state of meltdown. Business enterprises are folding up. Millions of people are losing their jobs and their sources of livelihood. And obviously, the ones who are bound to suffer the most in times like these are the poor. Yung walang savings, those who live a hand-to-mouth existence. Sa Tagalog, isang kahig, isang tuka. In the Gospel, Jesus recalls what God did to make sure that the Israelites would succeed in crossing over the immense desert between Egypt and the Promised Land. Walang shortcut, isang mahabang disyerto. But the fact that they were able to make it, that they were able to reach the Promised Land after 40 years in the wilderness was a big miracle in itself. Sila mismo, they thought it was impossible. But, look, they managed to get through. Sa Tagalog, nakatawid sila. What was it that got them through the desert? Hindi yung manna, not the manna itself, but the lesson that came with it. In the book of Exodus, Moses gave a very clear instruction to the Israelite people. Kung may cardboard na noon, baka yun ang sinulat niya, get only what you need for one day. Except, of course, the weekend, they had to get extra for the Sabbath day. In other words, huwag namang takaw mata. Do not hoard. Leave some for others, especially the more needy. This reminds me, of a story about an educated group of lowland trekkers who were being guided daw by indigenous Ayetas to the crater of Mount Pinatubo. Apparently, Habang daan, ay nakakita sila ng puno ng bayabas with ripe fruits. And they asked the guide, "Can we get some fruits?" Sabi ng Aetas, "Of course, serve yourselves." Pero nung makita ng Aetas that they were picking too many fruits and putting them in their bags, in a nice way, sinabihan daw sila, "Please, get only what you need to eat along the way. Mag-iwan naman ho kayo ng konti kasi may iba pang dadaan sa daan na ito." Wow! Mas civilized pa sa kanila yung Aetas. Parang ganoon din ang prinsipyo ng community pantry. Oo, nangangailangan ka, pero alalay lang. Mag-iwan naman para sa iba. At meron pang biyayang darating sa mga susunod pang araw. Lahat tayo makatatawid kung aalalayan natin ang isa't isa. We can cross over this desert if we can think not only of ourselves, but of each other's welfare. You know, Jesus completes the manna concept by adding the component of giving what you can. Prinsipyo na naman ng community pantry. In one of the community pantries that I saw in the social media, I was touched by the sight of a few pieces of soda cracker flakes. Hindi ko na ibibigay yung brand. Soda cracker flakes being put in the pantry shelf by the person who was in charge. Kasi, kaya ako na-sorpresa, I did not see boxes of them, of the biscuits. I saw only about 10 pieces. I imagined that they may have come from kids. It must have been all that they could afford. But it fulfilled the objective, magbigay ng ayon sa kakayahan. Remember that this gospel discourse on the bread of life in John chapter 6 began with the story of the multiplication of the 5 loaves and 2 fish. 5 barley loaves. Na-explain ko na nung nakaraan. Barley is the bread of the poor. Ilan ang pinakain? 5,000. John tells us the humble contribution from a little boy was able to feed 5,000 people. And I am sure that the pantries that have spontaneously sprouted all over the country have already fed more than 5,000 people. Hindi ba milagro yan? But, like I told you the other day, John prefers to call it a sign than a miracle. What multiplies the loaves, what multiplies the goods in the pantries is not magic, not supernatural power, but kindness, thoughtfulness, compassion, generosity, a sense of solidarity, a sense of co-responsibility. Talaga namang hindi magandang mabuhay ang tao para sa sarili lamang. Hindi lubos na tao ang taong nabubuhay para sa sarili lamang. Selfishness, self-centeredness, yan ang nagbababa sa ating pagkatao. The instinct for survival of the fittest, matirang matibay. Totoo ba yan? Oo. Sa mga hayop, prinsipyo ng kahayupan, matirang matibay, survival of the fittest. Our instinct as human beings is the opposite. Survival of the weakest. Bakit? Dahil nga hindi tayo hayop. Tao tayo. We are human beings. And what makes us truly human is our capacity to take responsibility for one another, especially the weakest and the most vulnerable ones among us. When one poor person takes a whole tray of eggs, kung may nakapila, maraming tao, may isang tray ng itlog na natitira, at bibit-bitin niya lahat. Well, she's not acting any differently from the super rich who establish business monopolies with nothing but profit for themselves as their absolute goal. Hindi lang sa mga dukha nangyayari ang pagiging ganid o takaw mata. Mas nakikita ko yan sa ilang mga super rich. A whole tray of eggs is just a little more obvious than the billions and the trillions that are made by business empires owned by people without conscience. People who do not even seem to know anymore what is enough. Some people may have a reason to be threatened by the community pantry idea because they take it as a subtle critique of society. Pasensya na ho, humahaba ng konti. I really wanted to ask you to reflect with me on this. The tendency to hoard, to accumulate, to get more than what one needs has been more the rule than the exception in our societies. Ang pagiging profit-motivated, consumer-driven, overproducing modern societies where only a few benefit from the goods of the earth. Alam niyo po, ang buong mundo'y isang malaking community pantry. And something has been terribly wrong about the giving and the taking. Give what you can, but take only what you need. As the saying goes, there's enough for everyone's need, but not for everyone's greed. Hindi sasapat ang biyaya ng Diyos kapag katakawan at pagiging ganid ang umiral sa atin. This pandemic is now giving us the opportunity to correct this madness and to restore our faith in the innate goodness of humanity. Let me now end with this thought. This is the bread of life that Jesus is talking about in the gospel today. Actually, hindi naman inimbento ni Jesus yung idea of the bread of life. He found it already in the Old Testament, in the book of Deuteronomy. And you remember that part where Moses reminds the Israelite people, remember how the Lord allowed you to be afflicted with hunger and fed you with manna, a food unknown to you and your ancestors. Bakit kayo pinakain ng manna, pantawid-gutom? In order to make you know that one does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes forth from the mouth of the Lord. Every word. The word of God is food. The Word of God is provision for the journey. Pangtawid. And that Word of God became flesh in Jesus Christ, precisely to lift our humanity and raise our dignity as children of God. And we're trying to give flesh to that Word again, to the simple idea of the community pantries, ang ating pantawid gutom sa panahon ng pandemya.